Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Nick Day. Thank you for joining me today on this HackerEarth webinar. I'm going to be focusing on a topic which is how to hire excellent talent. So I've been working in recruitment now for over 15 years. I specialise in a number of key markets. For myself, it's predominantly human resources and payroll professionals, but I've recruited roles across a spectrum of different industries and titles. And I'm hoping today we can talk about some key topics which will help all of you to create a really good and robust recruitment strategy to hire excellent talent going forward. Some of the subjects I'm going to try and cover today will include how to develop a proactive recruitment process, searching and candidate mapping, measuring the correct metrics, benefits of a bespoke candidate engagement strategy, and perhaps most importantly for me, and then hopefully for you, is how to attract the top 15% of talent that's available, which will then allow you to maximize your recruitment ROI. So thank you ever so much for attending today. If you do have questions during the webinar, please do put them in the chat box. I will try and answer them either as I go or at the end of the webinar if that helps. You can ask anything you like. I'll also do my best to respond to all of those if I can. And if everyone's ready, let's begin. So that's myself. I'm managing director of a company called JGA Payroll Recruitment. I set the company up in 2008. Basically, I wanted to change the way that recruitment agencies source staff, and I'll lead into some of those methods during the presentation. But I've worked with many of the leading international FTSE and SME clients, placing candidates right down from sort of payroll administrator and HR officer roles right through to global international directors for leading brands such as Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard. So during my time, obviously in order to get an excellent reputation in what we do, it's important that as a business we always aim to recruit the right talent and the best talent. And that's one of the biggest challenges I think that businesses are facing right now. And I think it will continue to be a challenge for the foreseeable future, particularly due to the competitiveness of the industry at the moment, which I'm sure all of you on this webinar will be familiar with. Now, at the moment, there is a global talent and skill shortage. Statistics suggest at the moment that 46% of employers claim to have difficulties filling jobs. 25% is the reason for this, and 20% are paying higher salary packages to hire good talent. You also find as well at the moment that employers are getting increasingly desperate, and as a result are working with multiple agencies to try and fill a requirement. Personally, I don't feel that employers benefit from lots of recruiters racing against each other to fill a payroll position. I think it becomes a contest that rewards speed over quality, and I think this type of process results in poor quality hiring decisions. So I'm definitely an advocate of using one agency. That's in a little more detail later. One of the reasons, or some of the reasons, for the shortage of quality talent at the moment, so shortage of good applicants, lack of required experience, lack of technical competencies, very high salary expectations, and poor soft skills. And obviously the HackerEarth software is something that actually helps work out who the best candidates are in terms of technical competencies and some of those soft skills as well. But certainly it's something that we are focusing more and more on to try and make sure that we get the best candidates available in the market. So how do we hire? We mentioned some of the subjects at the start that we're going to be covering, and I think it all begins with developing a proactive recruitment process. I think at the moment there's a real issue with resourcing functions and strategies relying on what I would call a reactive process. And when I say reactive, that's very much relying on traditional sources for locating talent. And for me, they would typically involve things like job boards and even LinkedIn. I think at the moment, many hiring managers believe that LinkedIn is the holy grail for all applicants. I would personally beg to differ. Certainly, 1 in 18 potential candidates for a role will be actually available or visible on either a job board or LinkedIn. So that leaves us with 17 potentially excellent candidates that we can't locate through those sources. So it's important that we have a really good proactive recruitment process that can access those hidden 17, if you like, or as we would call it, those passive candidates, which will hopefully give them a bigger range of applicants that clients aren't usually used to receiving. There are ways of locating those candidates, and I'll talk about the candidate mapping techniques that we use. You introduce into your own recruitment agendas, and then measuring the correct metrics to make sure that when you find the correct person, you are gauging that good hire not necessarily by the speed you found them, but by the value they add to your business. Typically, we believe that if you develop a good proactive recruitment process, hopefully the other things will naturally fall into play. So as mentioned already, only 1 in 18 employees at the moment list themselves on a job board or on LinkedIn. So we find that we try and locate other sources. One very good example for us here in the UK is have a Facebook profile than they will a LinkedIn profile. So therefore, the potential database of suitable candidates is significantly larger. And yet, surprisingly to us, very, very few clients at the moment are really utilizing the passive search capabilities of technology such as Facebook, where many, many people are listed, and how to really get hold or locate those candidates effectively. There's also other sources I'm sure you're all familiar with, such as Twitter, Instagram. There are other sites as well, such as Medium, which is a great blogging platform, where we can access other candidates outside of the usual places people visit. 18 employees currently within our sector anyway list themselves on a job board or on LinkedIn. So it's those other 17 that I'm really interested in locating. Now, Albert Einstein, I'm sure you're all familiar with, once said that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Personally, in the industry, this is something that I guess that we find is a particular challenge. When we deal with hiring managers, they expect all agencies and all recruiters to work in exactly the same way. And if you do that, effectively it's a race of who can find the person on LinkedIn the quickest and spend the most person for whatever reason, perhaps isn't of the quality or the caliber that they hope they would be. And I think even when they don't work out for whatever reason, that client will then go to exactly the same agencies to follow exactly the same process and expect a different result. And we try and do things a little bit different here, and hoping some of these strategies will allow you to have a bit of an advantage over your competition as well in locating that best talent. So one of the things that we do here, we engage and have developed over a number of years something we call a 24/7, 365 inbound candidate, very closely to that proactive recruitment process I mentioned at the start. What this is a number of different strategies and tools that we utilize so that candidates hopefully come to us in a proactive fashion rather than us reactively trying to locate them. Some of the things we do behind the scenes here is to very much build an authority in our market. So you'll find, and by all means follow me or connect with me on LinkedIn later, that we actually write a number of different articles, white papers and reports, which are very, very relevant to the industries that we operate in. What that does is it gives an agnostic view of how things work within the payroll and HR markets. And as a result, we hope to bring, I guess, the people that work in our industries together to read our articles and hopefully find value in them without us actually selling our service. We hope that with good content, we'll build trust with our candidates and client databases. We hope that the content we release is newsworthy and of interest to them, that can help them work in their roles more efficiently. As that trust builds over time, we find that when candidates or clients either need to recruit or need a new position, trust and that they believe is a genuine specialist in that market. So that's just one of the many things that we do here, that we build and submit a number of reports and blogs and white papers to build that trust so that when people look to make a move, they contact us directly before they put their CV on a job board and before potentially they even have a LinkedIn profile. This gives us a huge network of individuals which we have access to that our competitors don't. And obviously we try and keep them on that exclusive footing so they're just with us going forward. But there are other strategies as well. Some of those will when we pick up candidates, we always make sure that we put them into certain categories of skill sets and systems and other bits and pieces that we will then try and maintain a regular contact with those individuals so that when the right opportunity comes available, again, we can proactively contact them. But I think it's really important that whoever you are and whatever your sector, that you are always trying to build your authority in that market. Every single agent out there these days seems to call themselves, and I put this in inverted commas, a specialist. In reality, I think there are actually very few specialists in the market. I personally exclusively for the last 15 years, and I wouldn't profess to be a specialist in IT recruitment or accountancy recruitment or any other sector for that matter, except for my two core markets. But it means that as a result of that, I can genuinely call myself a specialist and hopefully have built an authority and a trust with the candidates and clients that I work with, who will then come to me in a proactive fashion so we can build those candidate networks and databases early. So going forward as well with the inbound strategies that I mentioned, interestingly, the average person checks their phone 85 times a day. It's twice as much as people realize. 80% of these users are influenced by user-generated content. There's even something called the phantom buzzing, which is where people think that their phone has buzzed because it's on vibration that actually hasn't happened. That's how often that people are receiving messages and engaging on content on their mobiles at the moment. But again, it means that if you don't currently have a mobile strategy in place, or you're not currently releasing mobile-friendly content, then you're missing out on a huge proportion of people that are checking their phone on a regular basis. I think there's an over-reliance at the moment on people just on LinkedIn and assuming that will be enough to build authority. But the reality is candidates now and the millennials and are smarter and are doing things a little bit different. And if you're able to make your recruitment campaigns mobile friendly, and if you're able to build trust with your prospective candidate database, if you like, that you're trying to target with good, newsworthy and relevant content, then they're going to be much, much more likely to be influenced by your brand and therefore hopefully apply with an application. So it's incredibly important that within your recruitment strategy, if you want to hire excellent talent, that you have a really good mobile strategy going forward. 89% of job seekers are likely to use a mobile device to find work in the next year, and 1 billion job searches are performed on a mobile device each and every month. Again, this just re-emphasizes my point that you need to make sure that not only is your content mobile friendly in terms of building that trust, but also if a candidate wants to apply for a position through either your website, if you're the hiring company yourself, or if you're an agency that wants to, encourage applications to your database or to your agent, then you want to make sure they're able to do that via mobile device. You also want to make sure that any adverts that you are submitting externally are also visible on mobile device. It's something that's grown significantly over the last 5 years. I think that 1 billion, I've lost my thing. 1 billion thing here shows that exactly. I'm not sure if I just lost my screen. Apologies if that's the case. We should be back in just one moment. Bear with me a second. Here we are. There we are, so back. Apologies for that. Okay, so 1 billion job searches performed on mobile devices every month. 94% of recruiters now use or plan to use social media to help with their recruitment. 56.7% of first-time job seekers use social media. Social network usage continues to grow, and recruiters who do not adapt will be left behind. This is something that we're really, really trying to ensure we stay on top of within JGA Recruitment here. And I think as 94% of recruiters plan to use social media, gives you a bit of an idea as to where and how those positions which are going to be recruiting for in the future are going to be advertised. Now, I think when we talk about social media here, there's definitely are thinking that this typically results in just Facebook or LinkedIn, but actually there's still a huge following on Twitter, and the ability to share. And the reality is, across those three mediums, you can probably access a huge proportion of that passive job market that we're looking for. So make sure when you are planning on your strategy to hire excellent talent that you are utilizing a full social multi-channel strategy to ensure that you're getting the best people through the doors. So let's assume you've got a really good strategy now, and one of those billion users that are looking at the adverts every month has made an application. That application is exactly what you're looking for, and you successfully place that application with a client. The next and most important thing then, if you want to hire excellent talent, is to ensure that you are measuring the correct metrics. Is it the right person? Is it in the right role, right time, right price? But most importantly, and I think the most valuable metric to measure when really understanding if you've recruited excellent talent comes down to tenure, or the attrition or retention of that applicant. The ability to retain a candidate over a 12-month period, I think, is the metric that should really be measured. I think if you recruit someone brilliant, but all the training and the costs associated with that recruitment, if that individual leaves within that first year, you have to start all over again. And actually, it probably costs you more as a business in terms of time and investment than it does that the applicant able to give back to your company. So the most important thing here is to ensure that when you do recruit somebody and you found that excellent talent, that you onboard them correctly, that you support them correctly, and most importantly, that you're able to measure those retention statistics. Going forward, then, you want to make sure that over a majority of placements that you're measuring, it'll be interesting for you all to analyze how many of those people are still in that same role or same company 12 months later. For me, that's the true metric to ensure or to assess to see if you really do have a robust and excellent talent recruitment strategy going forward. The overall the cost of hiring, the value the hire adds to the business post-placement, increasing market share, reducing the strength of a competitor are all fantastic metrics that we need to measure. I think that fourth point, where you can increase market share for your clients or for yourselves by reducing the strength of a competitor, is a really interesting one, because obviously you can hire their talent as well. There are many headhunting firms out there, I'm sure, will assist you in that process. But going forward, those four things mean little unless you can retain them. So how long do these new hires stay with your company? And when you've assessed that metric, you can really get to understand what it costs to hire excellent talent for you. It's much better, in my opinion, to take your time over the recruitment process to ensure you get the right person than it is rushing a process, working with multiple suppliers to try and get someone in the door, only for them to leave a few months later. So the benefits then of a bespoke candidate engagement strategy. Consider overhauling existing talent acquisition strategies. If you are one of those businesses or recruiters relying solely on job boards or LinkedIn, have a think about other ways you can do things, and I'll talk about some of those methods in just a moment. Provide career development, autonomy, mastery, and purpose. This starts once you've recruited an individual. This starts from the first day that they start in the business, throughout their onboarding process. Always provide career opportunities. This is why people will leave one company to join another, and it's a much more powerful driver than salary. The idea that someone can join a new business or a new brand and move their career forward is a really appealing reason to make a change. The ability then to give them autonomy, mastery and purpose within that role, again, it's the kind of thing that people are really appealed to make a move for. Develop your employer branding. This is exceptionally important. It's something that you'll find many internal recruiters and HR departments are keen to try and establish more budget for. If you are able to develop your employer branding, it makes that inbound recruitment strategy much easier for you. It's much easier to attract the best talent to your brand, to your business, and make sure then that the employer branding differentiates your business from the masses. You can do that very much by getting social. Social, as I say, is not just designed to the likes of LinkedIn, but make sure you're social on other platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or whatever you feel is the best platform for your industry. This is employee perks, compensation, and benefits, and this is really around retention. It's all well and good getting somebody in the door, but if you're not able to retain them by not being willing to invest in your employee perks and compensation schemes, then you're going to lose those people later to your competitors who will. It's really, really important here that you invest in your employee perks and compensation schemes so that you don't actually end up spending a lot more further down the line in re-recruiting a similar level or lower level professional to replace them. If you invest from the outset, hopefully those people will be more bought into your brand and therefore will be less likely to want to leave in the future, therefore that's massively improving your retention statistics. So 80% or 83% rather of recruiters and talent leaders believe employer branding has a significant impact on their ability to hire. I know we've just covered this briefly, but I do not underestimate this as an area that you need to consider within your recruitment strategies going forward. If you become an employer of choice, it makes the whole job a whole lot easier. So before we go into attracting the top 15% of talent, it's worth considering some of the other ways that we can locate talent outside of just LinkedIn and outside of job boards and outside of advertising positions as well. Something that we've done here at JGA Payroll Recruitment is we decided 8 years ago, or nearly 9 years ago now, to map the entire industry. To do that, we established who our key clients would be in terms of employee size and demographic. For us, it was employers with over 500 employees. Typically, they would mean that they would need to hire one payroll professional. Of those in the UK, there were just over 6,900 potential clients for us that fitted that bracket across the UK. Once we established how many there were and how many employees worked across those 6,900 employees, we were able to establish a rough estimate of how many payroll people worked in our market within the UK. We predict there's about 34,000 payroll professionals working currently. So for the last 9 years, we've been working across every single one of those companies to map up and map down every individual within every single payroll function, and then track their movements using intelligent different pieces of software that's out there in the market. So for example, we introduced various VAs into our business to help us with this mapping process. We would locate, for example, a payroll manager of a leading FTSE company, and then we'd ask that VA to map up, find out who the people that payroll manager reports to are, and then map down, so who the people are that report into that payroll manager. Once that process was complete, we'd repeat the process for the supervisors and for the administrators until we had a complete picture of that entire payroll function. We believe now we have mapped 96% of the UK industry. And what that means for us is that if a position comes in that we need to recruit excellent talent for a client anywhere in the UK, we have access to, hopefully, 96% of the payroll people working in that immediate vicinity, hopefully within the same sectors, probably with the same systems, that we can access without even needing to log into LinkedIn or log into a job board. We have them at our fingertips on various different spreadsheets that we can then make effectively would be a headhunting or an executive search process to contact those individuals, which will probably be passive, may not be looking for a role at this particular time, but hopefully are waiting for a call to entice them away. And a company that we're working with has invested in their employer branding, has invested in a good career development opportunities and offering good compensation packages. Hopefully that's our job as the recruiter to be able to entice them into something new. Typically, we believe that passive candidates such as this represent the top 15% of payroll talent. But I think it's true for any industry probably that the passive talent is the stronger talent. Why? Basically, from our perspective, we believe that these candidates are more intrinsically linked to the value and the prospects of the job rather than just by pay. If you look at people that are actively looking on job boards or on LinkedIn, typically the biggest driver for change or for enticement would be salary. Looking at a passive candidate who's already happy in their role, it's not usually salary that's going to be the biggest driver to make them move. It's more likely to be facility to home, and perhaps it's agile working options, perhaps it's benefits, or perhaps it's career development opportunities. They're much stronger drivers for the passive applicant. If the clients you're recruiting for offers those things, you find they're much more intrinsically linked to the job and are therefore much more likely to stay. Thus, this improves your talent strategies and your hiring capabilities because, as a result, hopefully, your retention statistics become exceptional. So if you focus on passive talent, employee branding, look at inbound applications by building your authority in your market, become an expert in your market, not a jack of all trades or a generalist recruiter. Be patient rather than rewarding a process on speed. And I would always recommend using just one provider if you are the recruiter. I believe these 6 different areas or processes will really allow you to hire excellent talent going forward. Evaluate and shortlist only the top % of talent. Locating talent really isn't that difficult if you have the right skills, the right tools at your disposal. But recruiting the best talent, or the top 15%, is significantly more challenging. And that's why it's so important that you map and you take note of inbound strategies to recruit and attract people into your business well before an assignment potentially has even been granted to you, will really, really reap and pay dividends later on in the future. So how do you do that? Well, first, assuming you have those strategies in place, you can develop a shortlist of potentially brilliant candidates. You follow a consistent step-by-step process, and you screen talent with intelligent questioning to measure and evaluate. For us in payroll, we have payroll tests and Excel tests and different things like that we can evaluate skills with. But for your chosen markets, you'll obviously have testing procedures that are more relevant to you. They can include competency-based questions, technical questions, programming questions if you're IT related, or multiple choice questions, subjective questions, front-end design questions, and technical skills-based testing. These are all elements that allow you to assess one individual over another based on skills and competencies to get to that top 15% that you're aiming for. I know this is something that HackerEarth software provides for you, and it may well be worthwhile exploring with them to see how you can ensure you get the best talent using their processes. Typically, technical jobs tend to be the hardest to fill, and according to a report by CareerCast, 3 out of 10 of the hardest jobs to fill are technically related. Again, this is where once you have that inbound shortlist or that inbound strategy in place for candidates coming through, and you have access to those people where you can come yourself in a position to really shortlist the best of the best, this is where you can really elevate yourself and your recruitment process just that little bit higher to ensure that only the best, the top 15% of talent are getting through. And to do that, you can really utilize tools such as HackerEarth to really screen out and ensure that the only ones you then end up representing to the hiring manager are the best of the best. You have a candidate pool of tens, hundreds, or even thousands of programmers. How do you shortlist the best developers based on your requirements? It's an interesting question, but there are many tools out there like HackerEarth that can help. HackerEarth recruits who grade applicants using online coding tests. This is something slightly outside of my usual specialist subject, but we have a similar tool, JGA Payroll Recruitment, where we use payroll testing processes that have been written by people that have worked for the governing body in payroll, and same for human resources and also for manual calculations testing. And we also have other tests as well regarding behavioural profiling and so on. But they're certainly very, very important and useful tools when it comes to assessing the top talent. With HackerEarth Recruit, you can create online coding tests as well. So if you are working in developer or IT recruitment, this might be quite useful. I think 4,000 plus companies, including major international businesses such as Amazon and Apple, which actually are 2 clients that we've worked with in the past, are utilizing that software at the moment. And you can see there just some of the reasons why it might be useful for you to consider working with a tool like HackerEarth to help you recruit the best talent going forward as well. I think one thing that's really interesting here is the custom question library. We should never underestimate the idea that every client is different, every sector is different, and therefore every recruitment process has to be bespoke in nature if you want to attract the best candidates available. For one client here, a standard payroll test may not be right for our clients, who perhaps may be banking clients, but it may be relevant for another client working in the public sector. It really depends on each individual need to ensure you're able to custom question your recruitment process relevant for that role. So it's quite an interesting tool that HackerEarth offer within their product. How this helps you. You can remotely conduct detailed tests and increase your radius of hiring. This ties in as well with how to recruit excellent talent, not just through testing, but using technology to its fullest, if you like, or to its entirety, to ensure that you can access talent quicker and more effectively. You can now video interview, for example, and we certainly utilize Skype, WhatsApp video, and various other video tools to meet candidates across the globe. No longer do we have to jump on a plane to meet somebody face to face. We can do it online, saving us significant time and costs. And the same is true for testing your applicants as well. So something that you're not doing at the moment because you didn't realize the technology was there or the tools were available, they certainly are, and they will certainly set you aside from the competition or aside from those that aren't yet utilizing this technology. You can therefore reduce your assessment period from weeks to hours. You can create tests for any role without any subject matter expert help. You can drastically reduce manpower required to conduct assessments, which increases the efficiency of the process and the costs associated, and remove human error or bias in screening process. So we're maximizing recruitment ROI. So before I go into this subject quickly, the last subject of the How to Hire Excellent Talent webinar is just, I guess, re-emphasizing the key areas for me that you need to consider when measuring recruitment ROI. Number one, you want to try and ensure that you're always attracting and recruiting the top 15% of talent available in your industry. Number two, I believe you access that talent by having good inbound strategies and by locating passive talent, i.e. the talent that is not being accessed by everybody else on all the more traditional sources. Then it's really important you measure those correct metrics. That's not just how quick you found somebody, but actually more importantly, how long does that person stay with your business and what value do they add over that tenure? You can do this, all of these things, by developing a bespoke candidate engagement strategy, which starts right from the first day they join the business and continues through the onboarding process. So, maximizing recruitment ROI. Once more, attract the top 15% of talent. Access the overall talent pool, not just the 118. Try and access the hidden 17. Avoid processes that reward speed over quality. One of those may be working with multiple agents. Invest in employer branding. Make your brand the brand of choice over your competitors. If a candidate leaves a competitor for your brand, well, you're not only strengthening your own position, but you're weakening the competition. Invest in application and evaluation tools to develop strong candidates in order to develop the best candidate shortlist. Develop a world-class onboarding process so you don't lose them after all that time and effort's gone into finding them. And focus on retention to realize added value. So that's me. Hopefully that's a bit of a quick run through on some of the areas and some of the things we can do to develop a really strong recruitment process for you to hire excellent talent. Don't be afraid to map the talent that you have. Don't be afraid to map the industry or to hire external VAs to help you achieve this, because it really will give you a huge advantage over your competitors. If you're willing to connect with myself, or if you want to have any questions that I can answer regarding recruiting excellence, then please do send them through to me in the chat box. I'll have a quick look at that in a moment. And hopefully I'll do my best to help. Give me 1 second to have a look at some of these questions. 1 moment. Okay, so one of the questions here comes in as invest in employees via compensation and benefits. So what I mean here is, just to explain this a little bit further, is basically if you invest in compensation and benefits from the outset, then not only will you attract them to your business, but you'll be able to keep them more effectively and more efficiently. There's nothing worse than spending all of that time and attracting someone to your brand, only not to continue investing in them and to lose them later to your competition. Ultimately, it's significantly more expensive for any employer to locate and pay for talent externally than it is typically to keep them already within your function. And I think what happens is many brands now underestimate these costs, don't like to promote or reward as much as perhaps they should. And that's when people start to get despondent. And if an employee is getting despondent, they're going to leave. Not only are they going to leave, they're going to talk to their colleagues and potentially encourage them to leave as well. Simple changes, simple rewarding schemes, compensation schemes and benefits packages, reward packages, if you like, that encourage employees to stay and to keep them happy will ultimately reap dividends in the long term. I hope that answers the question that you were hoping to ask. What else have I got here? How can recruiters contribute to that? So I'm missing the first bit. Bear with me a second. Okay, so how can a recruiter contribute to the compensation and benefits package? There's actually lots you can do. I always view the word consultant as a really, really important term in what we do. So we're not a recruitment agent, if you like, or worker. Typically the people we employ in what we do, they're recruitment consultants. And that very much means we should be offering a consultative service to our clients. And that very much involves educating clients into what salaries should be in order to attract the best talent. It should be educating clients in terms of what remuneration packages competitors are offering, so that you I guess, try and encourage the client that you're working with or the client you represent to offer packages that are competitive. We have access to, as recruiters, multiple pieces of client data that we're able to pull together to work out what a competitive remuneration would look like for a particular role or individual or business or sector. With that information, we should be educating our clients as to what genuine benchmarking should look like. I have a regular conversation with clients here that they'll say, well, we're offering X amount of money because this is how we benchmark it. That's all well and good. They've benchmarked correctly. That's fine. But it's actually to entice somebody from one business where they may be secure to join another. Typically, you have to offer more than just the benchmarked amount. Someone is not necessarily going to move roles for the same money. So you need to be able to offer a package that's competitive, and clients need to be willing to offer more money in order for that to happen. But I very much believe it's the recruiter's role to educate your client and to educate the hiring managers that you're working with to say, look, if you genuinely are committed to getting the best talent that are going to add value to your business over the long term, then you need to be offering a package that reflects your commitment to hiring the best talent as well. So that's how I'd answer that question. So there's anything here that I haven't answered yet. Bear with me a second. I think that's most of the questions I've got here for now, unless I'm missing any. I'm struggling to open them all, to be honest. Bear with me a second. Just seeing if there's anything else that I've missed. If there is any other questions you'd like me to answer, please do put them in the chat box. Okay, no, so I found some more questions here. So bear with me a second, I'm going to run through these quickly. How can we improve recruitment in pharma industry where we employ more salespeople where chance of attrition is high? I'm not a pharma specialist, so I may not be the best person to answer the question. Firstly, I would want to understand the reasons why that the industry were losing staff. So the first question really should be centered around the exit interview process and discovering why people are choosing to leave. Is it down to a hiring manager, working conditions, pay, remuneration packages, location? Once you've understood by monitoring various people as to why they've left, it should give you a bigger picture or a better picture as to why they're leaving, which will allow you then to educate the hiring manager for the reasons as to why people are going and what you need to do to improve your recruitment metrics or attrition statistics. If it's a sales-based role, it may well be down to commissions or may well be down to the product they're selling. But certainly there's going to be some questions you need to ask of the hiring manager there to really understand why it is people have been leaving. And I don't think enough businesses at the moment hold or handle exit interviews very well. Typically, especially perhaps in sales, people hand a notice in, they'll leave an employer, really get to understand the reason why they've left. So certainly I would be advocating for exit interviews, thorough exit interviews to be introduced into that business or into that function so you can understand why they're experiencing the attrition that they are. What else have we got here? Give me 1 second. Next question. Mostly job boards and LinkedIn is covered. Would like to know strategy for 15% talent approaching techniques. Well, I mean, really, the approaching techniques for 15% of talent is around locating them, and then really just using a standard headhunting process to make the connection. Locating them, that's very much about building authority in your market. So you should be talking as an industry expert in that particular sector, really building trust with your client and candidate base. And remember, you'll be much potentially will be being read by people that you're not familiar with yet that are looking in your market. It's when they've read your articles over a period of time, they will then commit with a CV or with contact with you. So certainly building authority and building trust, that will certainly allow you to improve your inbound strategies for locating good talent. The second way, as I mentioned before, is mapping the talent. So if you know the particular clients that you want to work with, or that you can get good talent from for one of your clients, then I would start mapping them. Don't rely on those people to appear on a job board or LinkedIn, but proactively work through that organizational structure until you've worked out exactly who reports to who across the whole business. So you have a full hierarchical structure, an organizational framework of that company. So when a role comes available, you can just directly contact that individual using standard headhunting practices to say, look, I've mapped your details from X, and this is an opportunity I think would be perfect for you, and building a relationship that way. That's certainly what we've done. You often find those people aren't expecting a call necessarily, but that's why they're passive talent and often the best talent available. So hopefully that's useful. I'm not sure if that fully answers that question, but there are many strategies out there. It's really making sure that you're visible and that people can access you and they see you as a specialist, and just demonstrating that you're not relying on people that everyone else is approaching. May I know how I really reduce the cost of hiring? Okay, it's an interesting question. Again, it's about measuring the right metrics. Reducing the cost of hiring depends on, I don't know your market or your sector to answer that question fully. I need to understand more specific process, but certainly if the cost of hiring are associated with rehiring people you've hired already, then clearly there's a problem with your retention capabilities for that client or for your business. The cost of rehiring is very expensive, and I think it's really important that as a client or as a recruiter, you get to understand the reasons why people are leaving a company in the first place, so that you can A, educate them to improve matters, or B, put things in place to prevent those reasons from occurring again in the future. It's really important to understand what the drivers are for people working in your business. You have to that business have good investment in their employer branding. Are they investing in their employees? If they're not, who is? What are their competitors doing? Feed that back to your client. Try and understand what the drivers are for working for that business and what the drivers are for people leaving that business. That should really help reduce costs. I think where people usually waste money in their recruitment process is by recruiting too quickly and by not really focusing on the best candidates who are, as I say, intrinsically linked to the job rather than just moving for pay. People that are intrinsically linked to the brand, have a genuine interest in the company and the career prospects, are much more likely to stay and therefore reduce the position for you than those that are moving just for money. If people are moving just for money, then chances are further down the line they'll move again. So hopefully that helps a little bit with that question. How do you map the top 15% of top talent? Like I mentioned that before. So find the industry or the client that you believe represents where that top talent is, and map it from top to bottom. There are various tools and businesses out there that will help you do that. We certainly have engaged with various VAs to help us with this process, where they will literally call an individual, find out who they report to, call that individual, find out who they report to, and continue the process until we have a full organizational framework for that company. We call it mapping up and mapping down. So once you've mapped up, you then go the other way, find out who reports into that company, and work your way down. It's several phone calls. It's not necessarily a quick process, but once you've got it done, you then know whatever the role comes in within that function, you kind of know where the individuals are to approach them really quickly. And I say there are many companies out there without me sort of highlighting any particular ones that will help you with that process. How can we improve recruitment? I've done that one. That's fine. Would like to, give me a second. Hi, Nick. Would like to know some scope of UK, India, Hong Kong markets hiring. Also interested to know where you feel the scope of recruitment is changing. Expectations of client and candidate extremely opposite. So that's the same question. Give me a second. Okay, so the same question. So interested to know where you feel the scope of recruitment is changing. The key scope, I think, at the moment is the multinational nature of it. The ability to interview someone in Hong Kong from the UK just via a simple, Wi-Fi connection. I think also the way that the recruitment's gone very, very social. 10 years ago, everyone had black books and had all the names of candidates written down in filofaxes and filodecks. We've moved on then to job boards where suddenly every candidate was putting their CV on a job board, and that's all we had to do was access them through by paying for those resources and sending them on. I think we've moved on now, and it's much more social. The best talent don't like putting themselves on LinkedIn anymore because they get bombarded with recruitment agencies contacting them and trying to sell them something. And that means that unless they're actively looking for a position, the chances are they will remove themselves from LinkedIn altogether. So I think that's how it's changed. I think the candidate has got a lot more savvy globally in terms of, the brands they want to work for and who they want to be approached by. And that's why I have to really emphasize the importance of building trust with your markets. If it's IT, then build your IT expertise trust by releasing IT-worthy content, by engaging IT-worthy tools such as HackerEarth that can really set you away from your competitors in a positive light by showing that you do things differently and you do things more proactively and more structured. I think educating your clients as to the processes you undertake to ensure you recruit excellent people has never been more valuable than it is right now. So if you are having challenges anywhere recruitment, but you have a differentiating tool, maybe that's HackerEarth or maybe it's something else, that allows you to sell your service or to show your service as being more efficient, more technically capable than one of your competitors, and I think it puts you in really good stead. I hope that half answers the question. Okay, we've got how to keep both the relationship warm at the same time. Warm, okay, I missed the first bit of that question. Oh, yeah, okay. Expectations of clients and candidates are extremely opposite, correct? How to keep both relationships warm at the same time. Okay, so you say they're opposite. They are in the sense that a candidate's looking for something new and a hiring manager wants to bring someone in. The hiring manager probably wants to do it at the lowest cost possible and the candidate wants to get the best package possible. I think this is all about long-term value, and it ties in again with that retention statistic I mentioned before of making sure that you are hiring on the basis that the person you find for that business is going to be there 12 months later. And that's certainly what I'd be selling to my client. I'd be saying, look, you may not want to pay X now, but ultimately you don't want to be re-recruiting this role in the next 12 months. You want to find someone who's going to add value. And what does value look like to them? So that's something you need to ask your hiring managers. For you, what would represent good value? Whether that's consistency, whether it's sales, whether it's in process improvements or IT infrastructural change, whatever it is, what would value look like to them? I think once you've established what that value looks like and you're able to sell a candidate in a way that positions them so that they will be adding that value, the hiring contact becomes a lot more open to and flexible to attracting that individual. Again, it's all about that recruitment consultant tag, consulting with your clients and consulting with your candidate at all times to show that you are an intermediary that's hoping to bring two people together that actually want the same thing. They're only different really as you look at it outside in. When you get to the heart of it, a candidate wants a really good job with career potential. A client wants a candidate with drive, ambition, and who wants to progress and add value. If you can marry those two things together, you should have a really, really productive and exceptional recruitment process. And that's something that I think is rushed. I think at the moment, most recruiters or most businesses will try and rush a process. It's all about getting a CV in front of them as quickly as possible, saying they can do the job. But you're missing the key elements. They're missing the opportunity to really understand from the client perspective what it is that drives them and what it is they want. And we make too many assumptions. We read a job specification, see a skill on there and assume if someone has that skill, they're going to be perfect. But actually, the key for us really as recruiters is to understand what the hiring manager really wants to get out of this individual, what the projects are they want delivered, where that value lies, and then marrying those requirements and expectations with an individual that has and wants the same thing. If you do that, then you really do create recruitment harmony. Hope that answers that question, Sani. Also here. Any more questions? Yes, a couple more here, so nearly through them. Bear with me a second. Automation in recruitment is now focused by industry where you see the scope of recruiters. If we are so dependent on technology, what is the scope of recruiters for tomorrow? Okay, no, that's a good question. Well, I think recruiters are always there because technology can only do so much. Ultimately, technology like HackerEarth is really good for assessing skills, but technology is still, in my view, not so strong at assessing culture fit. And it's also very easy, in my view, to create profiles that will meet the criteria of, or will fall, if you like, some of the technological systems that are out there. The human contact, for me, will always be available in recruitment. And for those that bypass it, I think will have very costly recruitment, will make very costly recruitment mistakes. It's two CVs can look identical, but the individuals behind those CVs can be vastly, vastly different. And I think this is where consultants' jobs become ever more important. As clients start to look for skills, they start to forget the importance of culture fit and personality. But actually, it's that personality that drives future progression, that drives ambition, that drives career development and growth. Having a skill now, but with no willingness to develop it in the future, will ultimately mean you probably need to replace that person 12 months down the line. However, recruiting someone that has the skill now, but also has the personality, drive, and ambition to change and to develop with that client, then you're much more likely to add value and retain with that employee for a longer period of time. So, for me, as an agent, I think it's absolutely essential that the human contact remains. It's understanding that our task is to utilize the best tools for assessing skills, but also not to underestimate the importance of assessing culture fit for that brand as well. Someone working in one sector sometimes just won't work in another, but a tool might not necessarily pick that up in the same way that an individual would. It's also really important as well that the recruiter therefore gets to know the client brand's culture as best as they can. I've worked in store for one of my clients for half a day just to establish how it is they work, how they do things behind the scenes, so that when I pitched that client to one of my candidates, and I had a really good understanding of what it was like to work behind the scenes in a very busy head office function. And it was an invaluable exercise for us. I hope that helps. Are RPOs more efficient than consulting firms? Is outsourcing actually beneficial? Really good question. So thanks for that, Monica. Personally, are they more efficient? It depends. Arguably, I would say no. It depends on how you're measuring efficiency. For me, just going back to the point I mentioned before, if you're a consulting firm working directly with a client, you should have, in theory, a much better understanding of the culture fit of that business, providing you put the investment into understanding it. There's no reason as well why consulting firms shouldn't be working with RPOs. And I think this is the key. Personally, I think that RPOs and consulting firms should be working together. If it gives you more access to more people and more talent, then why not? An RPO's responsibility ultimately is to find the best talent for a company they're on site for. The problem with an RPO is they tend to be very, very generalist in nature. So, for example, if I was looking for a payroll person and I went to an RPO, it's unlikely the person handling that vacancy at the other end of the line is going to be an expert in the payroll market, and therefore won't see or be able to spot some of the intricacies that are required in locating a really strong payroll professional or HR professional. I'm sure the same is true for any other industry. Whereas a specialist consultancy like myself in payroll, I'll be able to see an applicant and almost instantly will be able to tell you the strengths and weaknesses of that individual because I know the market inside out. I can tell by the employers they've worked for, by the sizes of the industry, by the systems they've used, by the processes involved, the approximate value of that employee in terms of benchmarking and the placeability of that individual. And I think that's where it changes. I think if an RPO can negotiate good terms with a consultancy, then it can be a really good, harmonious relationship. I think if an RPO tries to do everything themselves, there will be mistakes made. I think if an agency a consultancy tries to do everything themselves, then they will potentially struggle with the depending on the size of the employer, to fulfill all the requirements quick enough. So working together is probably the best answer I can give. I'm personally not a fan of the jack of all trades generalist recruitment model, where people are within an RPO, for example, are recruiting roles which may range from a payroll administrator 1 minute to an IT program manager the next, to a construction worker the next. I don't know how you can be an expert in all three markets. And I'm very much an advocate for specialist recruiters working in specialist markets. That said, I work with some brilliant RPOs who understand that importance, and as such, we have some really good relationships. So hopefully that answers your question a little. I guess it depends on what side of the fence you sit on. I think that's most of the questions answered. If there is anything else, please do drop it down quickly. Otherwise, I've really enjoyed having a conversation with you. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn if you wish to do so. I'm Nick Day from James Gray Associates. Thank you ever so much for attending today. And hopefully I'll be in touch with all of you very soon. Thanks very much.